Damn. Come on.
That is amazing.
Yeah, we're live everywhere. All right, so this is another pop-up episode of the Gunner Technology Livestream, and I called it Algorithmic Censorship.
Oh, interesting.
Which seems possibly appropriate. So take it away, because this is your topic.
Okay. So we kind of got into this discussion about, and it was interesting because it kind of parlayed on our episode from last week about Brave New World and whatnot. So it was kind of like, I saw this Facebook post about how Facebook and Google are basically democratic shills, and they're pushing the democratic agenda by controlling what you see and making sure that it has a democratic slant to it.
And where did you see this? Is this fake news?
This was fakenews.org. So no, it was on Facebook, the source of tremendously accurate news.
So you got your news about Facebook from Facebook?
Yes, exactly. From a Facebook friend. So obviously, you and I know this is incorrect, and I try to educate a little bit about how Facebook has what's called the edge algorithm. Google has what's called the page rank algorithm, which goes under several code names like Penguin or Orifice. Orifice is not a real one. I just made that up. But like Penguin, Sea Lion, they have all these code names for their algorithm changes. They've always had the same algorithm. They just tweak it. And when they make a major tweak to it, they name it, like the Penguin update, things like that. So what these algorithms are designed to do is to show you what's most relevant, or what Facebook or Google thinks you are going to think is most relevant. So in the case of Google, for example, it does personalize results somewhat. So if you're logged into Google and you have location turned on, which you probably do, if you search for aquarium, I'm using me as an example. I'm here in South Florida. It's probably going to bring up results for like the Miami aquarium. When if you're in San Diego and you search aquarium, it's going to give you results for the San Diego aquarium kind of thing.
I think it also does it by sites you visit too, not just location-based awareness. So depending on your previous search results, what sites you generally click on to get news or whatever related to what you searched for, those will show up higher in the page ranking if you have that turned on, if you have history turned on, or
right,
or if Google's tracking that for you.
Exactly. And your previous search history would be in there as well, like what you've searched for in the past. And all told, there's thousands of factors that go into the algorithm. But, we use algorithm all day long. And all algorithm is a fancy word for a formula. And so the formula could be good or bad. So meaning basically they're trying to, the formulas have a number of inputs, a number of factors that go into it. Like you said, location is one of them. Search history could be one of them. And it tries to use those factors to deliver the best result based on a number of those factors. If those factors aren't relevant, then the algorithm isn't going to be a good algorithm. It's going to be a crappy algorithm. So in the case of Google, and it was funny because I was just published our blog post for this week about the new Brave New World.
Yeah, the Brave Newer World.
Exactly. So Google started as a research project at Stanford University by the two founders of Google. And up until that point, all search engines had a very simple and stupid algorithm. It was basically how many times does the phrase you're searching for appear in the text on the web page. So if you're searching for immigration, for example, whatever page in the in the search engine's index of sites that says the word immigration the most, that's going to rank number 1, and then number 2, and then number 3, and so forth.
We should give shout outs to those former, because I know I used Alta Vista for the longest time. That was my search engine choice. Ask Jeeves. That was another one. Ask Jeeves, I think, actually had a Super Bowl commercial at one point.
It did.
That's how big Ask Jeeves was. And I don't think we can ask Jeeves anything anymore.
I think we can ask Jeeves if he wants a job.
Yeah, exactly.
So They were the first one to come up with something different. And again, their first algorithm was kind of simple also. They used, part of their formula was how many times the word or phrase appeared in the body of the content. But more importantly, it was how many other sites linked to the main site. So if you think of the site here and the phrase immigration, how many other sites linked immigration to this main site? And that's kind of how they derive their main ranking for that. And again, even that first one was called PageRank. So
it's a lot like citations in research. So the more citations a research paper has, the more prestige it has in terms of, within the field. And I'm not sure if that's actually where they got the idea for their algorithm from, but it's the exact same way that it works. And I know actually there was a famous mathematician where people had a score depending on how close, I think it's Paul Erdos. It was some ranking. It's how close you were to that mathematician. So if you learned from someone who learned from someone who learned from him, your rank would be 3 or something like that. So it's sort of the same thing where it's, if a page is referred to a whole bunch from a bunch of pages that are also ranked highly, then that page itself is going to have a really high ranking in your search results.
Sure. Yeah. So, and that was kind of the nexus for it. And then from there on out, it's been a game of kind of cat and mouse. Well, kind of a cat and mouse thing, but again, new technologies have become available that allows for new inputs. Like back then, you couldn't see the location of the user, so you couldn't even use location as a factor for search results. But the major thing that led to the changes initially were this cat and mouse game of gamification of the system. So use the dummy example, for example. How many times does immigration appear in the body of the story? You can imagine that people quickly figure that out and would put immigration in the body of a story 1 million times and rank highly for the word immigration. So when they changed the algorithm and it was how many sites point back to a site, you would have all these people they would create called link farms. And they would create all these dummy sites that would just create links back to the main site, and they would game the system that way. So then you had this other kind of thing come up called domain rank and domain authority. And you have a domain authority from, I think it's 1 to 10. And that authority is based on not just a global authority, but you kind of rank as authority on a number of different topics. Like ESPN has a 9 for sports kind of thing. And so Google then said, okay, if you have all these domain authorities pointing back to your site, we're not going to count that a lot as a 9 pointing to you. And same thing if you had, for example, if you had a site on cooking and ESPN linked to your site on cooking, even though ESPN's a 9, it's a 9 for sports, not for cooking. So it's not going to help your page rank that much if ESPN is linking to your cooking site kind of thing.
Chris Berman's food blog linking back to your cooking site wouldn't have any effect.
Like at some point, Ask Jeeves just ranked or lost all domain authority. And then you had another safeguard put in called domain age. So what they found out was a whole bunch of new sites could be sprung up to try to game the system. But if your site has been around for 10 years, it's probably at least more likely than not a legitimate site. If it's been legitimate for 10 years, it's probably a legitimate site. So again, you can start to see all these new factors get put in, and there's no human control. There's no human controlling this. The humans, the data scientists, the algorithm scientists create the algorithm, kind of say, okay, spread your wings and fly kind of thing. It's not like a puppet master type scenario.
Well, there wasn't human control for a long time, but I think that's somewhat changed. Jeeves. Well, Jeeves has the same and everything. But I think now they are explicitly controlling search results, right?
That's what they. Okay, so that's the conspiracy theories.
To lead into the conspiracy theories.
Yeah, and so that's the conspiracy theories that I guess there's someone who's really quick, because that's the other thing is I think there's 20,000 searches performed per second on Google. So it's a very quick human. He's just kind of like filtering all these results very quickly at a rate of 20,000 per second. This human is just incredibly fast. But no,
it's Barry Allen. They have Barry Allen is.
But no, and it was kind of funny because the online conversation sort of progressed from, okay, clearly there's no overt filtering of results. But the example was used if you go to Bing.com and start typing for Hillary Clinton health, you get a totally different set of results. If you go to Google and start typing Hillary Clinton health in the search ahead, in the type ahead.
Okay.
And that didn't really prove to be my point. And I was trying to explain what you see there is going to be different from what I see there. The other thing that's kind of funny is to think that Google is some massive liberal company, but Microsoft isn't. Like that was the other kind of thing that was kind of weird to me.
So Google took the theory is that Google removed the autocomplete Hillary Clinton health issues.
Yes, I think
because that's like the top Bing result, but it's not anywhere in the Google autocomplete.
I think that's correct. That's correct.
Do they have like a list?
A list of censorship
autocomplete like stuff. Yeah, like
no, that was the only one. That was the only one I saw. And to the other point,
would Google have a list that they would run through to be like, we can't show them this, or is that the idea?
Well, so Google does actually. It's a good point. So Google does filter type ahead, and it filters it for obscene language and obscene language. So excuse my language, if you say shit, if you say, for example, in the news recently, the shithole countries thing, if you say something like Donald Trump shit, it won't autocomplete obscenities. Just like your phone won't autocomplete obscenities too. That's why everyone says this day is ducked up, because it actually will filter and not autocomplete obscenities.
But Bing, I guess Bing does censor, pardon my language, it won't show shithole countries unless you type shithole and then a C. No, not even that. No, it'll show you shothole countries.
Okay.
So that's why Bing is doing well.
So this was very enlightening to me because I didn't know that anyone actually used Bing. So that was that was the
most shocking part of this episode.
And that was kind of my point was, okay, is Google filtering their auto search to remove Hillary Clinton health issues? Or is Google just a better search engine that knows that people who search Hillary Clinton health are more interested in her stance on health care or things of that nature rather than health issues? Because Google is by far the more used search engine than Bing, and there's nothing preventing anyone from using Bing. So my point was, is it more likely that Google is explicitly filtering Hillary Clinton health issues, or is it more likely that that's just not the most relevant results? Which we can argue that, but my contention
does she have health issues?
Well, she's a cyborg, but other than that,
everyone knows that. That's the first autocomplete.
No, I did actually look this up after this came out in 2016 during the
when she passed out. Yeah.
But again, that's the other thing you have to understand. Another component of Google's algorithm is timeliness. So again, that happened toward the beginning of the 2016 campaign. It's not current news anymore.
Never forget. So it's still current news to me. I can't get over that. That one time she mildly passed out.
Right. So
the internet doesn't forget.
So then the conversation moved from this idea that Google has Corey McFilterson sitting there filtering results to the idea that the algorithm itself is biased, and provided me a link to I think it was a TED Talk or something on the idea of algorithmic bias. Now, this also was interesting because until that moment, and again, very apolitical on this show, until that moment, I had only ever heard or seen the concept of algorithmic bias put forth by the most leftist of lefts. that there's and here was a conservative
really
now,
like Marxist or socialist websites would say that they're being filtered.
It was the idea of algorithmic bias was like in terms of more like the scoring systems of online systems are biased toward Black people or against Black people or against women. When you look up algorithmic bias, it's usually how algorithms tend to favor white males.
So not like a political thing, just in terms of the actual search results themselves would bias towards the patriarchal.
Right. And I'm not even talking about search results here. I'm talking about anything related to any sort of algorithm.
I see.
Generally favor the people who wrote them or created them because of not necessarily overt bias that is put into the algorithm, but because of inherent bias or implicit bias that we're not aware of.
Or unconscious bias. Yeah. Okay. Correct. That makes sense. Okay. But this guy wasn't coming at it from that angle. He was coming at it from an objective angle or a non-left angle?
Yeah, he was using this to buttress his support that Google does filter Hillary Clinton health issues. Because at first it was an overt conscious effort to keep that out. And then I guess it kind of morphed into this idea that it wasn't intentional, but because of algorithmic bias, unconscious bias, it gets filtered because everyone at Google is so liberal, so liberal that the algorithm they create would automatically exclude things like Hillary Clinton health issues. Does that make sense? I mean,
yeah.
Does my explanation make sense to me?
The explanation makes sense. Okay. No, the explanation makes sense. Yeah, yeah. I was just trying to noodle through how they would actually. I mean, that's what I meant by my list. Like, how would they actually accomplish that other than?
I'm not sure.
Certain search results return certain. Because searches return certain search results.
You're right. And on no certain level, and let me explain how algorithmic bias works, and then you can kind of see why algorithmic bias would not be responsible for filtering Hillary Clinton health issues. So algorithmic bias, again, when you're creating an algorithm, and usually big companies don't have one guy sitting around creating an algorithm, but let's make it a simple example. So like if I am making an algorithm and I'm trying to create an algorithm on kind of what makes the best pizza, right? It's going to be biased to my preferences. So like I can say the more cheese on the pizza, the better pizza it is. But really I'm just saying that. Maybe I'm not aware of it. But to me, it's a personal preference that makes the best pizza. And so that implicit bias gets put into my algorithm. So then my algorithm is then skewed to favor pizzas with a lot of cheese, regardless of if the person making the pizza likes cheese or not, kind of thing.
That's the disconnect for me, because I don't see where in Google's algorithm that analogy would. There would be a relative extra cheese subject to Google's algorithm. I mean, they would have to explicitly say, rank these pages higher because they skew towards the left on the political spectrum.
Right. Well, and I can create a contrived example, right? Like we use my example of domain age, right? And so I use this point. If you take the exact same, hold everything else constant, hold everything else the same, and I do mean everything. You take the same article and you put it on CNN.com, and you put the same article and you put it on Newsmax.com. Newsmax is that crazy right-wing conspiracy site with the guy who thinks that frogs we're poisoning frogs to make them homosexual.
Oh, Alex Jones?
Yeah, Alex Jones. Okay. So if you take that same article and put it on CNN.com, you take the same article and put it on Newsmax, it's going to rank higher on CNN.com. And it has nothing to do with a political ideology filtering. It has to do with the fact that the domain CNN.com has been around longer than the domain Newsmax.com.
I mean, so could you use that same argument for why search results would skew left, just by the very fact that most news outlets that have been along for a long time seem to be farther left on the political spectrum, or at least not as far right as the newer sites? I mean, the Breitbarts of the world are much newer than the New York Timeses of the world.
Right, right, exactly. And so back to the point of algorithmic bias, let's just say, again, Matt Cutts, who's kind of like the head of Google's algorithm, let's just say he's the only person. And he has no evidence. He has no evidence to back up the point that older domains are more relevant. In his personal experience, the older domains that he's gone to have been more useful to the newer domains. So if he then just puts that into the algorithm, that was algorithmic bias because he has no data to back up the fact that older domains are better than new domains. He's going strictly off of his own personal experience. Now, the interesting thing again to that, on the other thing that another item that we talked about was immediacy or timeliness of search results. So this is where it gets really weird because YouTube and Google really did change their algorithm, and they changed it recently after the Las Vegas shooting. And the reason was news agencies, when something like that happens, they'll put out the information, but very little information on it. Okay, just the facts, because as stories are developing, they don't put out a lot of content. But because they could be sued, they can be, they're held accountable for what they put on their sites. But all these crazy right-wing sites that publish these conspiracies, they were going ham. They were publishing all of these proven wrong, by the way, conspiracies about like 3 shooters and multiple windows being knocked out and the Illuminati and whoever else knows what. But they had so much content and it was out so quickly that when you searched Los Angeles shooter, all these garbage sites were coming up ahead of CNN.com. And that was based on 2 factors. Number one, another factor that weighs into the PageRank algorithm is how much content is there. Again, all things being held equal, a article with 100 words is going to rank lower than an article with 1,000 words. So that combined with the immediacy that they were publishing these really quickly, and it was a self-feeding cycle because the quicker they published it, the more links people were posting to those sites. It kind of took over. And when you search Las Vegas shooter, you had like this guy proclaiming that a woman with no socks was the mastermind behind the entire thing.
Huh. So it's not so much bias, so much as it is the algorithm is looking at everything completely objective and weird things happen.
Right.
When you basically take a completely objective look at the internet and how everything's structured.
Exactly. And as we talked about, it's people ruining everything. People will say, oh, how many times does this word appear? That's how I'm going to rank. So I'm going to put this word on my page a bajillion times. Oh, it's how quickly I publish. Well, I'm just going to post whatever trash I possibly can as quickly as I can. It's people who ruin it. And as you said, there's unintended consequences in that. And the algorithm has to be changed. The most famous example, which we talked about, is the 2015 example where Google was tagging their images and automatically based on an algorithm, and they were tagging some Black people as gorillas. That's an unintended consequence of an objective system. And it's obviously very extremely embarrassing, and Google had to do something about it. But it wasn't like a Google engineer was sitting there saying, "I hate Black people, so I'm going to tag them as gorillas in the search results."
Yeah, and I think there's an example on the other side of that, which is I think if you look for American scientists or famous American scientists,
famous American inventors.
Yeah, I think like 80 or 90% are. I think the reason for that is simply the phrase African American inventor appears so frequently on those pages, an American inventor, that 2-word phrase appears in such proximity that's why the page looks like that. And that's one where it's like, I mean, what do you even want to do about it? They are famous American inventors. So, I mean, there's really nothing to do in that case. So,
and to your point, it looks at also a number of factors, because the other reason that happens is because most people who are searching for American inventors just search famous inventors. But if you search famous American inventors, usually the full search that people type in is famous African American inventors. So Google was almost assuming you forgot to put in that word African American inventor.
Exactly. So I guess it's this weird thing where people want to find something.
Right.
People are looking for a reason to get.
Yeah,
angry.
exactly. And the same thing goes with Facebook. And again, at the beginning of the show, I said how Google has PageRank and Facebook has EdgeRank. It's the same thing. It just determines what's in your newsfeed. And again, that is the same type of thing. It looks at what you've talked about in the past, who you've interacted with, what you've liked, what you've commented on, what you've shared, and it creates this algorithm to determine what you see in your newsfeed. And at the end of the day, like, aside from mass usage, these companies, like, their bread and butter is their algorithm. They're not going to screw with it to slant toward a certain political ideology, because if their algorithm isn't the best, isn't the most objective, isn't the most useful, they're going to lose tons, and I mean tons of money. They can't afford to not be objective.
Now, what is Facebook doing with their fake news algorithm? Because I know they actually had to like go to Capitol Hill and talk about the fact that, and I think it's just Russia trolling us, right? Russia just like floods Facebook and Twitter with fake news as much as they can just to stir the pot.
Yeah, exactly. So, and again,
which is glorious in its own way. I mean,
for some reason, people don't believe this, even though it's kind of it's verifiable fact. But people don't believe that Russians meddled in that way. And they did. What they did is they did two things. They had actual humans pretend to be other people and like just get people so mad about a certain thing. Like they would have people create like Black Lives Matter rallies in like a Facebook event in Martin County. And then they'd have real people talk about how like we can't let the white man subject us. We got to get out there and have a rally. And they would schedule these things. They would like schedule an actual event in Martin County on, say, October 21st. And it would look like it was going to be this big event, but the day came and no one was actually there. But all the people in the area would get so worked up. Oh, how dare these black people think they're going to take over our city? And they get so worked up, they would just be anti-Black Matters for no reason other than like Russia convinced these people that these Black Lives Matter people were really trying to invade their city. So that was one aspect of it. And the other aspect of it was, just a whole bunch of bots that would come in and leave like comments like, I hate Hillary, and they would like each other's stuff. So it would look like someone would have a huge following and be liked a lot, but it was just like a big bot farm.
So it's similar to gaming the Google PageRank algorithm in terms of
exactly
like
right.
link farms and stuff like that.
And so, but it would have the algorithmic effect of making a comment appear more relevant in the algorithm because it would be shared and liked a lot more times. And it has the psychological effect when someone sees it. They're like, oh, wow. I mean, this comment got a lot of likes. It must be true, or it must be have some sort of clout to it or whatnot.
And so, I'm not up to date on what Facebook is actually doing, but how are they actually trying to combat that, other than having Jeeves go in there and just remove stuff that's clearly from Russians?
So actually, this is very relevant to us, right? So one of the things that Facebook did was they changed their advertising options. So Facebook has all kinds of crazy data on us. What we like, where we work, all this kind of crazy stuff. And as an advertiser, and we Gunner Technology do advertise on Facebook, so I've seen a lot of these options. And so you can target someone based if they work in the government sector, if they're in procurement, if they're in management. Well, that was a lot of what the Russians used. And I was shocked by this, by the way. Russians used to target people. Like they target people based on, I'm making this one up, but it was something to do with Jews. They were targeting Jews based on political ideology or something like that. So now, as an advertiser, you can't go into Facebook and target someone based on their occupation and a whole bunch of other things, which it blew me away because, again, Facebook, that is how they make money off of advertising. So for them to go in there and say, I mean, sorry, as of 2017, you can no longer target based on this. I was blown away. So that was one thing they did, is limit what you can target people based off of. The other thing, which is a major overhaul of Facebook that hasn't been released yet, but is coming out, I think they said later this year, beginning of next year, they're going to severely change their algorithm to make everything that comes out, everything that ranks high in the algorithm, be from friends and family. So business pages.
That I did see. Yeah. They're trying to promote like actual person-to-person interaction, social interaction over the news angle. But even that seems like an overreaction. It seems like that's getting rid of a huge part of what people use Facebook for.
Yeah, exactly. And Zuckerberg posted about it and said, we do expect revenues and usage to go down based on this, but overall we think it's going to make it a better product.
Was that Mark Zuckerberg or Sergey Zuckerberg? They might have gotten you.
Well, I think the other thing they looked at was if a company or an advertiser is paying in rubles.
Yeah, no, I really, that's a red flag. Is that actually true?
I actually think. Oh my gosh! I actually think that's true.
Oh my gosh!
So they are doing a lot of things to kind of prevent that. And by the way, also on the filtering thing, that kind of doesn't have anything to do with. Well, it kind of does have to do with algorithms. Twitter has been banning a lot of people. And so I guess one of the people who got banned was, I think it was Roger Stone, who used to be the head of Fox News.
Oh, yeah.
And he got banned for using hate language towards someone. And again, all these Twitter users went crazy because all these other people use hate language and haven't gotten banned. Well, that is not algorithmic, by the way. That is based on self-reporting. So if someone reports Roger Stone, who, by the way, has a much larger target on his back than John Doe. So if someone reports Roger Stone, and again, the more reports, the closer they're going to look, then they're going to ban or suspend his account rather than someone with 5 followers using hate speech. So there's a lot of just common sense that goes into this that gets ignored because it's really easy to say, oh, Twitter, oh, Google, oh, Facebook, you're all controlled by libtards. Trying to suppress my viewpoint kind of thing.
Yeah, but it's just, if you take like 2 seconds to think about it, there's a rational explanation for why all this stuff happens.
Exactly.
That's tough. What a weird time to live in. I think people are so angry that they're just looking for any excuse to get all riled up, which ironically is the best thing in the world for these companies. Yeah, people are going to search for stuff more. People are going to get on Facebook and complain about it more. People are going to tweet about it more.
Right. Well, and what I said is like, because what the argument was is that they want regulation of these big companies, of these mega corporations who are controlling what we think. And again, this is what was mind blowing about me. To me, I'm having this conversation with a conservative who's arguing for regulation.
This is the weirdest time to be alive. Everything's so topsy-turvy right now.
Yeah, it was blowing my mind. I was like, next thing you know, Ronald Reagan's going to be crawling out of his grave calling for the formation of unions. I mean, I couldn't believe what I was hearing.
We need to jack taxes back up to 80%.
Yeah, exactly. So it is weird. And my point was this is a free market, or at least a mostly free market. If people really think Facebook is controlling what they see and what they do, start something else called the scrapbook. And, if it's popular, people will leave Facebook. Look, before Facebook, there was MySpace. Before MySpace, there were Friendster. These were huge networks that people abandoned because they became trash and went to Facebook. So if people really think Facebook is trash and it's really controlling what they think, they will leave and go somewhere else.
I'm going back to Cork.
I'm going to see if as soon as this episode is over, I'm going to go see if the AskJeeves.com domain is available. See if we can spin that.
That'd be such a good purchase. The only other thing I was thinking too, real quick before we sign off, is isn't there a bit of a personal responsibility angle to this, where even if there's fake news flooding Facebook, shouldn't people be rational enough not to buy into any of the stuff that's posted? Isn't there sort of like a consumer angle to this, where Facebook is like, should just be like, well, people have been throwing trash out there for forever. It's not up to us to convince people that this stuff is complete nonsense.
Yeah, well, I mean, I agree. Oh, but so Google and Facebook now have a loose partnership with fact checkers like factcheck.org and Snopes. And so they'll put like a little marker next to it if it's like highly cited or proven wrong. They'll put like a little warning or something next to it or whatnot.
Yeah, Washington Post does it too. Don't they have like the Pinocchio scale?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But the thing is, like, when I had conversations with people online, I've started copying and pasting the contents of an article from like Snopes or factcheck.org and sending them the text rather than the link, because the minute they see Snopes, they're like, oh, Snopes, might as well send me a link to like Liberal Today or something. It's like, no, this is your point. Instead of just looking what's printed on in the masthead where it says Snopes, read what they say, because they have links to the proof, to the evidence. Let the evidence speak for itself. Don't just look at it and say, oh, it's Newsmax. Oh, it's Snopes. I'm not going to believe anything on there because of the name. Read the content. It's the same thing. Someone posted an article on Facebook the other day about how Denzel Washington was trashing Barack Obama's presidency. And the quotes from Denzel Washington are just like, that they were so unbelievable. It's like, who actually thinks that Denzel Washington said this type of stuff? That Barack Obama is running a banana republic and should be locked up? Like, I mean,
it sounds like something Denzel would say.
Oh,
were they lines from his movies? Were they from like Training Day? They just took them out of context.
And so, and it's funny because a lot of that stuff, I looked it up, and that made up site Snopes posted links to those same quotes attributed to other celebrities. So it's just,
sure.
It's just, but there's no, it's an echo chamber, and people aren't going to listen to anything it doesn't support their own belief. They're just not.
Yeah, so it's a tough position all around. But I guess the moral of the story is, although Facebook's doing stuff that's bad for their business, so I mean, maybe there is going to be a wave that way, but it seems like at this point, they just want to have the best search algorithm or the best way to provide content to you on Facebook. I mean, that's their industry, is making user sites as much as possible. So it's like the idea that they would somehow game it to lose a huge swath of their audience seems somewhat ludicrous.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, they are not going to jeopardize. They may take risks in other areas of their company, and certainly they do. But the algorithm is so core to their business competency that there's no way they would jeopardize that for a political leaning.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think that's a wrap. Be sure to check us out. AskJeeves.com. Look at Gunner Technology's new homepage.
Yeah, and tomorrow we're going to have a real episode, right?
Tomorrow, Thursday, 1 o'clock is our regular live stream. Will be part 2 of the Big Four. Let's see if we can remember them. AWS, Google, Facebook. All right, you do it.
Oh, yeah. It's Google, Apple, Amazon, and Disney.
Just talked about Disney. There it is.
Disney. And it was funny because I published a blog post today available. Just go to gunnertech.com on part 1. And it's a big one. It's almost 3,000 words long. And so I got done with it, and I realized I had written about 5. I threw Facebook in there. So I'm just like, I'm going to leave that in there.
So tune in tomorrow for the Big 5 conversation now. Which probably makes sense. Facebook isn't going anywhere. All right, so we'll see you guys then. Thanks, good.